My name is Richard Ferrer, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm Cloud Hired.
I'm Cloud Hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family. I'm Cloud Hired.
So, I'm Cloud Hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm Cloud Hired, thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm Cloud Hired. Because of Go Cloud Architect program, I am Cloud Hired. See!
I am Cloud Hired. Thank you, Mike and the GloCloud team.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Michael Gibbs, and I'm joined here by Mark Milovanovic, and we're here today to help you build your technology career. We come online once or twice each week to help answer your career questions so you can get to your goals as fast as possible. I've been in this tech space now for over 25 years as a cloud architect, a network architect, an enterprise architect, a business architect, you name it, all these roles. And I've spent more than 2 decades helping people just like you get your first tech job, get promoted in tech, negotiate a $100,000 raise. And in my experience, it's been very easy to get people to their goals when they know where they're going. But in the tech world, for some reason, there's so much misinformation and there's so much confusion around the roles that we actually do that I find so many people literally waste years to get to their goals. And sometimes, and it really saddens me, I've worked with people that are great people, and they've learned all the wrong things for the last 3 to 5 years. And because they wanted to advance and they worked hard to advance, but they learned the skills for other people's jobs or skills that weren't going to get them to their goals. And that saddens me. And that's why I'm here. I was lucky enough early in my career to have a mentor. It was a VP of architecture over at MCI WorldCom. And I asked that VP, what is a perfect network architect? What is a perfect enterprise architect in your experience? What are those people that you would hire and every single time and love? It was really great. I got a full list from that VP of everything that the employers desired, and I became everything on that list in 2 years, and I instantly made it to principal architect role. And that was within less than 2 years, not the normal 10 to 15 years. And I've been teaching these methods to people for decades, and I love it. I love watching people get promoted. I love people getting hired. So please ask us your tech career questions. I see a few of them have come in. But ask us, because we can't help you with your goals unless we know your goals. So welcome about that. Now, a couple things I want to tell you guys. We got some exciting stuff this week, and a lot of it's free. Tomorrow, Mark and I are going to be doing a BGP workshop. BGP is the routing protocol when connected to either the internet or external entities like cloud providers. It is a protocol that very few actually understand, even though it is absolutely critical for the cloud architect, the network architect, or anyone honestly designing systems. And guess what? I love to teach. So tomorrow we will have 2 Cisco certified internet experts with about 40 years networking experience teach you BGP. It'll be me and Mark Milovanovic. So we're gonna have a good time with it. It's free. So sign up for the free BGP workshop. While we're at it, guess what? Me and Mark and a Mohammed from my team and a Benjamin from my team, 2 more network architects. We have a completely free AWS Advanced Networking. 3 of the people are Cisco certified internet experts. And Benedict is a CCNP, and he's just as good. He's amazing, honestly. Together, we have about 75 years networking experience, 50 to 75, and we're going to teach you the AWS Advanced Networking completely free. So sign up now, it's there. last thing that I'd like to advise you that's free this week, we've got an How to Become the Ultimate Cloud Architect webinar. It's on Thursday at 1 p.m. I love teaching these things. We will go over the cloud architect role, and chances are it's not what you think it is. We will go over what we do. We will cover how to get hired when you have no experience. We will cover how to not get auto-rejected from those pesky HR people, because that'll block you unless you have 3 Olympic gold medals, 50 years experience, all those ridiculous things, and 50 different people's jobs. So we'll go over that, and we'll then tell you every skill you need to actually get a fantastic job. So with that, ask us your questions. We'll begin. Mark, you want to say hello? And I see the questions are coming in.
Hello, everybody. It's always a pleasure that you're able to make it, put some time aside, join us for it, ask us your questions. We look forward to being able to answer them. And as Mike said, we have very many exciting things actually this entire month. We got exciting things with the BGP workshop coming up tomorrow. And then next week, we got the AWS Advanced Networking coming up. And there's a lot more things that we're planning behind the scenes that I think all of you would enjoy. So be sure to subscribe to the channel, click that notification bell, or whatever the rest of the YouTube jargon is that I'm not familiar with. But in any case, I am happy that you're all here. I really definitely look forward to your questions.
Sounds great. And we're going to get to the questions, but I'm going to ask a question of Raj Sumith. So we'll be able to ask his questions in a few minutes. Raj, I read what you said. With the accumulated CRM related experience and commitment to problem solving, I have a proven track record to acquire real world knowledge on any network technology in 100 hours. Raj, I don't really know what that means. And I mean this in a very respectful way. So I'd like you to try to think about it and put into words, and we will help you. What are you trying to say here? Are you trying to say here you've architected CRM solutions to optimize people's business experience? Or you saying you've worked on CRM systems as an implementation engineer? Are you talking about maybe you've done some business process re-engineering to optimize an organization's workflows in order to be used in order to based on their CRM systems? What are you trying to say? And so I'll happily help you figure out how to add it to your LinkedIn profile, but it's still what you're telling me feels like a lot of buzzwords that are strung together, but I don't actually know what you mean. So please respond to that in the chat box. Sumith, Raj, we are be thrilled and honored to try and help you better position yourself. So we'll be able to take it, but I need you to translate it for me. So we'll get your.
Yeah, it looks like he's actually asking you somewhat the same question. He's asking how would he be able to add that type of ability and skill set to his LinkedIn profile.
I saw that, but I'm trying to translate this into something that I can understand, so then I can translate it into something that hiring managers will understand.
So Raj, I don't know how to answer the first portion of your question, to be honest. When it comes to something as you're telling me that you're quick, that you're trustworthy, and so forth, like you can learn a technology in less than 100 hours. If I ask you prove it, how would you do so, right? So you got to figure out a way that, generally speaking, we talk about you show something that you've accomplished, a result from that, maybe a project, something that you can discuss. So you need to be able to kind of scale that back, not make the claim of 100 hours, and rather just say that you're a person that's enthusiastic, that excited, has passion, and is willing to go beyond and beyond and be able to learn a technology if they don't know it already. And then as you go into that interview, you tell your story, meaning the scenario we're in, your experience, as it relates to that customer, to that employer, and what they are trying to hire you for.
Yeah. So
you also got to keep that in mind.
Yes. So give us some information about that, and then we'll repackage it. I can guarantee you there's many technologies you can't learn in 100 hours. I can guarantee you there's certain technologies that'll take 10,000 hours to learn, even if you had 30 years experience, and I can tell you which they are. And I can also tell you that there's many technologies you can learn in 5 hours, but I want to know what you've done in CRM. I want to know what you know about CRM, as the technical as a business, and then we will help you package it. And we're more than honored to, but I need to know what that actually means. So let's get to the first question while we wait for that, because I really want to help.
All right. So first question is from Cloud Doctor. Hi, Mike. Where do you see the role of cloud architects heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
Cloud Doctor, I love that question. And for the most part, I work as a technology futurist and strategist in my architecture roles for almost 30 years. And I've honestly, Cloud Doctor, had a chance to watch these architecture roles unfold. Around 25 years ago, we first architects were almost really design engineers. And if I show you where we're going, the past, then you'll understand the future. And what did we really do in those days as design engineers, the first of the architects? We were techies. We were like super engineers that had a lot of engineering things. And what did we focus on? Designing the tech to work. And that was when nothing worked. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind. That was the first architects. They were design engineers, and they were all tech focused and really nothing else. Then right after that, Cloud Doctor, we had the technical architect, which was really still an engineer. This was a person that was focused on the tech. Now, this technical architect would periodically speak to the business people to make sure that the business needs would be met, but it was a tech-focused person. The technical architect would design it, and who knows, every once in a while, the technical architect would look at the technology and even help the engineers with it. That was the technical architect. And then we moved into these cloud architect and solution architect roles. And they became fairly divorced from the tech. They became 50 to 80% business and 20 to 50% tech. And what happened, Cloud Doctor? Why did we start going to these newer hands-off architecture roles? Well, what really happened, Cloud Doctor, was almost all the technology projects that are in existence are disasters. I mean, the tech works, but here's what an architecture disaster is. Company spends $1 billion on a new technology. They obtain zero business benefit from it, and they wasted $1 billion. Now, Cloud Doctor, I can tell you that 70% of all architectures are like that. They fail to drive any transformation. Mm-hmm. This is on the cloud. This is off the cloud. It doesn't matter. So what you've seen is a migration to these business-oriented architects. It really started about 15 years ago. And day by day, companies don't want their architects to look anything like engineers. They still want them to have the technical competency. But the architects started getting involved in what's the vision and the strategy for the organization? What do the organization's business processes look like? Or how does it get done? And how do we optimize those business processes? Then how do we start evaluating the technology? And now determining how the current technology will enable those new business processes based upon those new business goals. And then we architects typically create a future state of the technology working backward from the business goals, and then compare the tech that we have now to the tech that we have in the future, and how do we get there from here? More of a gap analysis, if you will. And then after we do that, we typically think of, the number of people that are going to be involved, necessary to build it, create a statement of work, creation of a governance strategy for the organization, building, project plans, building out, less project plans, but still a lot of project work, like designs of projects, after creating the governance strategy, creating change management strategies. Now, Cloud Doctor, you're noticing everything I said is kind of businessy. And with these newer transitions into the architect role, you're seeing much more executive knowledge needed, CXO relevancy, sales, negotiation, vendor management, stakeholder management, business acumen. And Cloud Doctor, what you've seen is, as these roles they've gone from tech to business, the salary has gone up and up and up. And I'm seeing much more demand for business-oriented architects. Much more demand. So there's huge demand for architects, and the reason is most of these technology projects are failing. And organizations need, and they know they need, real architects. This means people that aren't biased to love a technology because they took a certification and they're all excited about a technology. These are people that are business executives, business strategists that can truly help an organization be more profitable. And much more designed for this.
Now, I don't know if you agree with this, Mike. When I ponder this particular question, I'm a little hesitant to give an exact answer, only because I always say I learned my lesson in regards to IPv6. Mm-hmm. When people ask you, when do you think it's going to take over? And you give them years and years and it never happens. But one thing that kind of came to mind where we're heading with this role, I think it's more a defined role itself.
Yes.
We have a lot of confusion in the market in regards to just generally what architects do. And that was something as novel as cloud architecture. I think that's going to get defined a lot further. And we'll see even that the bigger brands, they'll jump on board and we'll have some rebranding when it comes to what we currently see as engineering roles compared to actual design and business aspect roles.
Yeah.
So that's where I see that heading within the next 5 to 10 years. Now, exactly if, we'll have to see how it goes. But I think Mike and the rest of the team, we're definitely pushing the message out there to let people know that there is a distinction between what we're currently seeing that cloud architects are viewed as compared to what actual architects do out in the field.
Yeah.
Great question, Cloud Doctor. Right, from Tin Man. Question is, hey Mike, I watched this morning's video. Would you talk some more about Gen AI role and why it is such a hot thing?
Absolutely, Tin Man. So let's look at a couple of things going on in business. Businesses don't buy technology because they like it. Businesses have no interest in technology. Businesses have an interest in either increasing revenue, decreasing operational expenses, and increasing profits, which increases stock price as a rule. So if you understand that, then let's start thinking about what's going on. AI has the ability to potentially help an organization get rid of 30% of its employees and get more work done at the same time. So if a company can get more work done and do it with a third less employees, we've reduced their operational expenses by a third. Organizations also know, and this is the key here, that organizations that leverage artificial intelligence will have a huge competitive advantage. So it's kind of like an arms race where every single strategic organization is saying, who can have the biggest competitive advantage? And I want it to be me versus someone else. So there's that. The fact that AI is basically be considered what's called a force multiplier. For example, we can have one engineer. Let's say we had a software developer. The software developer writes code. So what's a software developer really do? They're searching around on these little code repositories like GitHub. They're searching around for something. They tune it, they make it, and then they debug it, right? Well, we could have, instead of having that and having a process take hours, we could potentially with AI have a software developer write all that code in 1.5 minutes with AI, and then spending a little bit of time, maybe 30 minutes, editing that code, and then it's done. So that enables, again, organizations to do more, which means they can create new applications, new services, and things that are there. Now, let's also talk, Tin Man, about what we're really excited about AI. It's forecasting, right? Now, I've been involved in AI architectures for 30 years now, almost 30 years, about 25. But the key is AI can analyze an enormous amount of data, and it can make recommendations. So organizations that have supply chains, maybe they can better price predict on their supply chain. Organizations such as airlines that use a lot of fuel can now actually look at news cycles, and they can look at what's going into the markets, and they can forecast when is the best time to buy a fuel contract to get it at the best price. Organizations that have customer service can outsource that first level of customer service to AI. And that way they can have a better team of more qualified people. So smaller team of higher paid people that are really great at what they do in case the AI comes, as opposed to these big, large, cumbersome to manage teams. And, it's also all the other business benefits to be gained in terms of revenue. AI can enable businesses to get close to the customer, to learn their customers' needs and wants, desires better, which enables customized offerings of things. Now this AI gets added to robotics in a few years, and now AI systems can build your house. They can fix your plumbing. And that's where it's getting there. So AI, because of what it can do to productivity, and productivity is the ultimate way you can enhance profitability. I mean, let's say an organization spends 30% more and gets 30% revenue. Did they gain anything? No. But if they have got a bunch of AI soldiers that can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, never ask for a raise, never go out on strike, never get sick, it's like they could have millions of employees when they may only have 100,000. And that's why organizations are so excited, and organizations are willing to pay for it. They can't be involved in the fear of missing out, because that would be a total disaster. But also they can't be crushed by other employer organizations that are going to do it. So now is the time for AI architecture roles. Look, all architecture roles are good. Any real architect that has some good business acumen and some good leadership skills and good executive presence, a couple of years into the architecture career can earn $500,000 a year. Anyone, once they get to the principal architect role and above. But these AI architects, I know AI architect positions for $1 million a year right now. And that's how bad companies need them. It's not the average, but they need them, and they need them that bad. So I was pretty excited to team up with David Lithicum to create an AI architecture program, because I'm excited about it too. The last time I was this excited about a technology, Tin Man, was when I was actually building out the internet in the late 90s. So that's how positive I am with this. And I pretty much correctly picked almost all of the tech trends with the exception of one. I predicted the mainframe would stick around, but it would be IP enabled. I predicted Linux would be the primary operating system in the world. I knew my team was one of the teams at Cisco that was responsible for the future of cloud computing, which we knew. I'll tell you, the only thing I was wrong about was Facebook. I didn't think anybody was going to want to take pictures of themselves and post it on the internet. But every other trend that I've been asked to predict in my career, I've actually been correct on. And well, you can't be right about all of them.
What would you say, Mike, about we know there's a marketing campaign, right? It's probably one of the largest marketing campaigns in history when it comes to AI to drum up the demand for it, especially for some companies that are riding the high right now on the chipset manufacturing and so forth, and then others trying to bring in context because of what it can do. But I had a question for you.
Yeah.
Could it be that because of how disruptive AI is in regards to how far it reaches, not just into business, but it reaches into governmental affairs, military affairs, it's being now looked at and being used in the production line in regards to how we're carving up animal carcasses for food. They're trying to figure out how to use that for AI. Yeah. But even more, it's now getting to the point where we're seeing personal benefit from it. So it's extended that far into it. Do you think that's also a huge reason why AI is such a big deal and why it's so hyped?
So I actually don't even see a lot of marketing dollars being spent on AI. I literally see the whole world being so excited about it that it's just everywhere. And that's because of what it can actually do. Yep. The medical world can see it as a means to help with diagnoses. The pharmaceutical world maybe doesn't need to spend $1 billion to design a new drug. A lot of it can be simulated in AI. We can literally sequence viral DNAs and human DNAs to try and find vaccines and other cures for things. It's that ability to just grow and analyze and learn. So not everybody, but a lot of people see the benefit of it. And when it comes to the people that make the decisions, meaning the executives, they see it. And the executives make the buying decisions. And they're basically saying, wow, I can see this, I can see this, I can see this, I need this. And this is good because this is business driving the tech, as opposed to like the techie people saying, hey, we should try this. The business people are driving this. This is really good news.
Okay, fantastic. And word of mouth can't beat it, right?
Yeah.
That's why I call it the biggest marketing campaign. I would also say potential. I would add that it's the potential, right? We see current applications, and we as humans, we love to dream. What else could we do with something? So the way it looks like, it's at the infancy when it comes to Gen AI, and with the right people at the helm, right leadership, I think the sky is the limit when it comes to what we can do with AI, not just from a perspective on how we can benefit from it monetarily, but I think if properly applied and the right people at the helm of it, I think it could be a very exciting time for humankind.
Absolutely.
Great question, Tim. Question from Cloud Doctor. How do you stay updated on the latest trends and technologies in cloud computing?
Cloud Doctor, if you actually understand cloud computing, you'll realize it's super easy to stay updated. And here's the reason why. Get rid of all these ridiculous marketing terms that they talk about at conferences. Get rid of every silly new feature which they talk about at a new conference, which is really a feature that was 20 years old that we did in the data center, that woohoo, one customer wanted it, good news. So if you really understand your fundamentals, what's really changed in cloud computing? We've got servers, right? We've had servers for 50 years. Now the core and the CPU count is different on these servers and DRAM now than they used to be, but it's still just a x86 type server. And when we think about that, and then we think about, virtualizing that server actually occurred in the 1970s with the mainframe over at IBM. And then VMware in 1999 invented the hypervisor. The virtual server in the data center and the virtual server in the cloud are the same thing. How about cloud storage, right? Block storage, object storage, file storage. This is 30-plus-year-old technology, too, that existed in the data center. Now, how about routers, right? We've been using them for 30, 40 years. How about load balancers? They're 30-plus years old as well. How about databases? 1970, some of these databases came out there. NoSQL databases and relational databases. How about firewalls? Well, they're almost 30 years old, too. IDS, IPS systems on the security side for intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, again, 30 years old. The only difference is in the cloud, they have less capability than they did in the data center because now you took physical and virtualized it. So it's still behind the times. Now, functions as a service are new. Whether you call it an Azure function, a function as a service, a Lambda, that's relatively new, but that's not much of a change there. Containers and container orchestration, yes, containers are probably 10, 15 years old, which is relatively new, right? But we had VLANs and private VLANs, which were the equivalent of a container, 2.5 decades ago. So none of it's really new. Now, the only thing that's new is in the old days, they called the virtual machine a virtual machine. They didn't call it Elastic Compute Cloud. I mean, they didn't make up silly names like this. They called it what it is. So the only real challenge of staying up to date in the cloud space, Cloud Doctor, if you really understand cloud computing, is figuring out what silly marketing names the marketing people call it at these companies. I have a little cheat sheet. Oh, yeah, here you go. Here's a virtual server. Here's a virtual server. So there's that. But Cloud Doctor, it really comes down to your fundamentals. I mean, if you just click a bunch of boxes and you don't actually learn how the technology works, it's always going to be new to you. But when you truly understand the technologies and you understand them well, it's not new. I mean, last year there was this massive thing. It hit LinkedIn. Everybody at AWS was promoting this. This is extremely exciting news. And big news. It's going to change everything. You can run encryption over a direct connection. And I sent that message to about 15 CCIEs that I knew. And I said, what am I missing here? And they're like, Mike, it's 1998 all over again. We did it at Cisco in 1998. But, Amazon's got to make it sound cool and exciting. Nobody's going to spend 3 times the cost of the data center price for the old thing. We got to market it. We got to make it fancy. So that's really what you do. But if your fundamentals are good, then adding different things and new variations of the same thing are very easy. If your fundamentals are weak, that changes everything. But if your fundamentals are strong, you're going to be great.
I agree. You focus on the underlying core technologies that make these different, what they truly are, solutions function. And then these solutions are going to have features. But once you have the fundamentals down packed, and again, you'll have to, renew them every so often, because if you don't deal with it, we have a very, very intelligent brain. It kind of discards a lot of the details then. It just allows you to keep the overview. So you have to, have a little like route kind of activities to refresh yourself. But aside from that, you always got to think about it. They're just layering on a different form of application of a particular feature. It's something that me and Mike, we just recently discussed too, in regards to the idea of what are route reflectors in BGP, and that there's an equivalent in the cloud, but they don't tell you that's what it's called. So, but if you knew that it was a route reflector and you had that underlying understanding why route reflector is there and why we use it, you would really just have to double check what are the actual use cases within a cloud environment, which is a virtual network, because we always say it's a virtual data center, so a lot of it's virtualized. And then the implementations. Many times there's restrictions on different platforms on how and what can be implemented. But aside from that, unless the actual vendor makes a change in how it operates, your knowledge does carry across. And worst case scenario, even if they make a change, let's say you have a route reflector, and all of a sudden you're used to it that a route reflector only takes in a route, it applies the best path algorithm to it, and then it reflects back to its, you can call them peers or other BGP speakers, what routes they should be using. And now you hear, let's just say one of the vendors implemented the route reflector so that's in the path. So it's in the data path. You know what a route reflector is for, but that's going to throw you for a loop. So you may have to just double check why they're doing it, how they're doing it, but the underlying core technology is still there. So I'll stop my rambling about route reflector examples, but
Yeah.
again, the core is really important.
Let's bring in the next one, Tyrone.
From Danka, hi Mike. What kind of architect will be more in demand in the near future? Cloud architect or AI architect?
So, Danica, let's kind of break it out. I think the demand for I feel the demand for both will be the same, and here's the reason why. At least 60-70% of the AI architectures are going to be on the cloud, which means we're still going to need our cloud architects. And as people leave the public cloud to go to private clouds because of cost of performance, we still need cloud architects. So I'd say the demand should be about the same, but I think we need to rephrase your question, Danica. We need to look at demand versus supply, because that's what we're really concerned about. At a given demand, what is the supply? There is a much greater supply of cloud architects than there are AI architects. So if the demand for both were the same, but we've got a greater supply of cloud architects than AI architects are going to get paid more because they're going to have a better point in that interaction on the supply and demand curve that looks like that X. So you'll see higher salaries typically within a good AI architect right now than you will a cloud architect, because there's almost nobody that can do it. Kind of keep that in the back of your mind. No one out there that can do it. So I hope that makes sense to you. Now, in the short term, I see more AI architect roles because lots of people have their cloud architects already working there and they can't find anybody. So in the short term, the next 3 to 5 years, I see more AI architecture options. But 5 years from now, when we've got the same of both, the demand should be pretty similar in both, because nothing works without somebody doing that enterprise architecture function. And whether you have a dedicated enterprise architect that's focusing on the executives, the business processes, or whether you've got a cloud architect that's doing those functions, it really doesn't matter, because where's the compute done? On a cloud. Now, if it's a VMware cloud, it's a Nutanix cloud, if it's an OpenStack cloud in the data center, it's still a cloud. Still need a cloud architect. If it's one of those, if it's saying Nutanix and it's connecting to Azure, it's a hybrid cloud. If it's reality and you've got your data center and maybe you're running into Microsoft Azure for AI, and then maybe you're using AWS for enhanced, enhanced infrastructure, it's a hybrid multi-cloud. And that's really the reality. So lots of demand for cloud architects, lots of demand for AI architects. I think in the short term, you got a supply and demand bonus on the AI architect side, which could be really good for salary. But we pretty much need all these architects no matter what we do.
I'll add, you cannot go wrong with either, in the short term, in the long term. And the reason I state that there's an overlap in skill set when it comes to cloud architect, AI architects, network architects, basically across the board, is because of what an architect generally does. Same with an enterprise. So from that perspective, what I would suggest is focus on the architect piece and don't be so focused simply on the actual acronym that prepends it. If it's cloud, if it's cloud. If it's AI, right? Other times it could be anything from a security, so forth. It's the architect piece that we all should be focused on, because everything else you layer on the skill sets. And that's why you see many times on our channel, on program, we focus on the skill sets that make you good architects, not technologists just by itself. Because if you're a good architect, learning the technology and its application, and I don't mean to minimize it, but it really is somewhat trivial at that point, because the other skills are a lot more difficult to handle and learn and maintain and then apply than is the technologies. Technologies many times are zeros and ones. It's really the complexity comes in and how a business requires them to be applied. So it's the architect piece. Focus on that, then it doesn't matter long or short term. Now, in the short term, I'll agree with Mike because we've seen the numbers. AI architects, they earn a little bit more, I would say, probably like $250,000 more, but that's a reality of the demand that there is right now. Go ahead, Mike.
And at the end of the day, it really comes, there's plenty of $500,000 to $1 million cloud architects too, if they've got, business acumen and leadership and some behind them. But, as a rule, I think we're going to see 20 to 30% higher salaries with the AI architects for the short period of time. But that's just a supply and demand curve issue. But long term, they're there. But there's lots of people that can easily make a lot more money right now because there's no one there. Kind of like when I passed the CCIE exam. And CCIEs back in, say, 1998 were earning $100 an hour. And they were working 60 hours a week. So that was $300,000 a year back in 1998 because the internet needed to be built out. And there was nobody to do it because everybody was looking at code and PCs and nobody thought about the network. I always look at supply and demand curve, so I went into the network. So, it's really the same thing. $300,000 in 1997 is about $900,000 a year now. And that was because of the supply and demand curve. So I love all the architect roles. Anybody that wants to be a cloud architect should be. Anybody that wants to be an AI architect should be. Anybody that loves security and wants to be a security architect should be. If you happen to be interested in AI and it's exciting to you, the AI architect is probably the best job in the world right now.
Yep. And you can if you're already a cloud architect, any type, you can always layer the Gen AI stuff on top of it. So it's not like you have to do without it once you are a different type of architect. You can always layer an additional understanding skill set on top of it and, make a little bit more money and help more people out. That's important as well. Great question. Question from Dingelman. Hey, Mike, my uncle just joined the program. Welcome. He has no tech experience and was wondering if he should go for solution architect roles or cloud architect roles. What's your perspective?
So Dingelman, here's the thing. I'm glad we had a chance to work with you. You're over at Microsoft right now doing a great job. I know you're super smart. And now we have your uncle, which is wonderful. When it's your first job and you have no tech experience, you have to take what's given to you. So, some people will be offered multi-cloud roles. Some of our students will get solutions architect roles. Quite honestly, I don't really care. The only difference between a cloud architect and a solution architect is pretty much focused on a single vendor's technology, and the cloud architect is focused on the end-to-end thing. Now, having said that, the solution architect by nature, if they only know one cloud and don't know how to make it work for clients, and the average client is 98% of clients need cloud architects, not solution architects, because 98% of organizations are multi-cloud. There's really only like a couple of companies you can work for as a solution architect. A vendor, NVIDIA, AWS, NVIDIA for GPUs and data center architecture, AWS, Azure, Google, Alibaba, Dell, IBM, HP's cloud, that kind of thing, where you work as a solution architect. And if you're going to work anywhere else, you're going to be a cloud architect for the most part because you're going to be designing across multi-cloud solutions. So whatever he gets first. I mean, if he gets a $200,000 solution architect job as his first job, who cares? If he gets a $250,000 cloud architect job, great. The real key is that he gets something in the architecture space because it doesn't really matter. They're pretty much the same role. So whatever gives him his job first is what I would take. I typically also, Dingelman, I'm less concerned about the first company people join because you got to find somebody that gives you that first job when you have no experience. And it might not be Microsoft the first time. You might have to work at a stepping stone company before you go to Microsoft. But is that a bad thing? No, as long as you're working as an architect, not an engineer, and you're learning architecture, not engineering. The challenge becomes when somebody gets an engineering job and then they want to be an architect, but what they've done is engineering versus architecture, and it's completely different. And that's where it becomes a challenge. But either one of these jobs, I'd be happy for him to get. You'll have to send me a message on Slack and let me know what his name is because I'd be happy to work with him.
And Dingelman, just keep this in mind. I know when we say no experience, we mean none of this try, true, and tested type of experience out in quote unquote the real world, like we like to call it. But the beauty about the program is that your uncle just joined is that it develops this type of experience and eventually will lead them to competency. So that in itself allows a lot of the students to already take on much bigger roles than they initially would have ever been able to do if they just focused on the technology piece of the particular solution that they were working on. So his choices are going to vary widely compared to somebody who hasn't gone through that type of training. And I think, Mike, what do we say? The training is at, what, 700 hours these days, just all on demand?
Yeah.
Something like that?
Yeah, there's well over 700 on-demand hours
for
if anybody wanted to go through the whole program. Most get hired before they finish going through the whole program because our program is so comprehensive And we created that kind of long form, extensively comprehensive format because that first interview, when you're not working, that's where they're going to be a little extra picky. You know, after you've been an architect for 10 years, the interview is more like, let's go to lunch, let's talk, give me a presentation, show me your sales skills, what are you looking for in your life? It gets real easy. But that first interview can be a little more technical. And that's why we over-prepare our people. And, you know, it's kind of interesting, Dingle, that a lot of the people, once they become architects, they say, Mike, you taught us all this tech. But at the end of the day, we don't do any of this stuff in our work. I mean, we do the designs you told us, the presentations you told us, the business cases you told us, the RFIs, RFPs, RFQs you told us, the design system. But, you know, we're less technical than you really think. I feel like my job is literally managing, you know, 30 other tech people. I'm like, didn't we teach you how to do that in class? And they say, yes. But it's a much less technical role than anybody would actually imagine the architect role. Very business oriented, very little on the tech. Which is why a lot of times when engineers become architects, they miss it. Like, I need my tag. But at the same time, it's both. Let's go to the next one there, Tyrone. And please, if you've got some questions, ask us.
So I'm from Leonard. Hi, Mark. It looks like there's an emphasis on AI architects in recent times. How do we reconcile with generic and other specialized cloud architect roles? You want to take a stab at it first? I got my opinions on it.
Leonard, so you got to figure out what you want to do. I'll give you some secrets. As a rule, the closer you are to the business and the further you are away from the technology, the more you will earn. So the enterprisey architects, the cloud architects with MBAs and lots of executive presence and lots of leadership skills, they typically earn the most. And typically your specialty architects are people that just love tech. Like me, I was a specialty architect in BGP architectures, and I'm literally not joking. Setting up BGP peering systems, and you know how many route reflectors and confederations we were going to deal with these kind of giant organizations that I did. What's that architecture need to look like? Where are these locations? What are our links? You know, that kind of crazy thing, and that's great because I love tech. And you know, I was young, I was geeky, I enjoyed it, and I didn't realize, you know, how badly it was going to penalize my career for focusing on the tech so much. Then I actually worked at Cisco, go figure. And my manager said to me, Mike, he's like, you know, this was like 20 years ago. He's like, you know, the difference between a $150,000 sales engineer / junior architect like you or a $300,000 architect. And I'm like, tell me, please, I need to know this. And he said, Mike, it's the impact you can make on your client's business, not their tech. He said, stop thinking about the tech, start thinking about the business. And he said, what I mean by this is, can you increase the revenue? Can you reduce their operational expenses? Can you improve employee productivity? He said, you do that. He said, so if you want a big architectural role, I need you to learn CXO relevancy, executive presence, sales skills. We'll work on your emotional intelligence. We'll work on your presentation skills. We'll work on your leadership skills. He did. And very shortly after, I got the salary raise that he promised me. So business always first. Now, when we have specialty architects, we have to think about it. The cloud architect's a generic role. It's a very generic role, just like the enterprise architect. Why? Because what is the cloud? It's a network and a data center, which means everything. So a cloud architect on a cloud architecture is going to need to deal with security architects to focus on the security, network architects to focus on the network, IAM architects to focus on the identity and access management, big data architects, AI architects working for them, data scientists working as part of their design team, DevOps engineers to go deal with, you know, the post-sales way it's going to be built, cloud engineers, because you're going to need some super techies. So that's the cloud architect. Now, once we start getting in and we go to these specialty roles, the specialty roles are going to have a bigger focus on technology and less of a focus on the business. And that's why they pay less, these specialty roles. So the network architect and the security architect and the data scientist, which is focused on this, and other things that are more specialized, they're going to pay less than the more business-oriented roles, except the AI architect. And because the AI architect is a specialist like all else, but the AI architect is benefiting on this huge demand with almost zero supply of architects in the AI space. So right now, if I have to pick the two best, it's the enterprisey type cloud architect, which is where I like to teach our clients because they get the best jobs and they get paid the most. And it's the AI architect. It really is. So they're my favorite roles right now. How do you reconcile with it? You got to figure what you like. If you truly love networking, Leonard, go be a cloud network architect or a network architect. You'll do just fine and you'll love it. If you really love security, go focus on security and you will do great with security. If you happen to be really productivity oriented like me, and how do we squeeze the lemon more and really maximize our results because you're like a competitive person by nature, well, then this AI space is the tool of the day because you can really figure out how to have that force multiplier. So that's how I'm there. Mark, why don't you share your perspectives here as well?
So I'm going to make the assumption here based on your question that you are either already a cloud architect or you are some type of other specialty. So how do you reconcile the idea of an AI architect? Just as I've alluded to before, you have already in common this transferable skill called architecture. So that in itself is already reconciled by default if you have the competency in it. So I wouldn't worry necessarily about that piece because it is the same. What might change a little bit before we go into some other things is the business requirements. And what I mean with that is, what is the focus at that time in that moment of the business? We see that it was over the last probably about 10 years, it was this migration from the on-premise to a cloud service provider environment. That's what the focus was. So it made sense to make our predominant and primary skill set that would be tailored towards cloud computing, and then everything that comes with it, right? The networking, the security, the data ops, the DevOps, and all that type of stuff. So if that's the focus of the company, the actual AI knowledge that you have and how that revolves around the business becomes a complementary skill, not your primary skill set. But if the company, and this is what we're seeing a lot of push right now, is where they're really focusing, they're driving towards AI, then guess what? Where's the AI applied towards? We already understood that we went from an on-premise to a cloud. Now we did some repatriation. Now we have a multi-cloud hybrid environment. So now you need to figure out, AI is my focus. Cloud, networking, security, they become complementary skill sets. How do you apply AI to all of that? So even though they might be generic or specialized, if you want to layer AI on top of all these, it's like what we always said. We're always going back to it. What are your core understanding, your fundamentals? You will need them because you can't apply AI and what it can potentially do for a business on top of anything that you don't understand. Now, you will have your network architects, your security architects, you will have your engineers, you will have all those people that you are going to be facilitating and talking to. So that's where the collaboration piece comes in place if we're talking AI. You still will need to have some type of understanding of what these different domains are, because you want to be able to talk to these people. Remember, architects equal leadership roles. So you need to be able to communicate with them, will lead them, motivate them, drive them. So that's where that space comes in, how you can reconcile it. And then lastly, roles evolve. I think what's going to happen with a lot of roles, it's going to hit everybody from a technician to an engineer to architect, that they're going to have to adopt some type of understanding and application of artificial intelligence, especially degenerative type. So that's how I see that how you can really reconcile it is that you layer something on top of something else. You make it either your primary skill set based on what is the company's focus that I'm working at, or it becomes a complementary skill set. I hope that answers your question, Leonard. And let's see, I think this was more of a follow-up. He says, with a lot of companies moving out of the cloud, does it look promising to be a cloud architect in the next few years? When I hear and read David's articles, it looks like gloom and doom for the cloud.
So Leonard and Tyrone, I'd like you to share the video that David and I recorded together, David Lithicum and I, where we talked about people leaving the cloud and why that's going to create many more cloud architect jobs. I'd like to place that for you. And then Leonard, I'll get to the answer. So it's great for the cloud architect because what happened first was in the early days of cloud computing, companies hired people based upon certification. And you know, they knew nothing. They knew nothing of architecture. They knew the name of a service and how to configure it. So what they did was They believed the fluff that was in a certification course that said cloud's cheaper. So they moved all this stuff to the cloud, and then it cost, David's numbers are 250%. That's kind of what we've seen. For example, Leonard, we have an OpenStack cloud in our organization. It's got 10 servers in it. And they all have, 24 physical cores and 256 gigs of RAM in them. When we looked on AWS to see, could we do this on the AWS cloud, they wanted $1,000 per month per server. And that was not even including the storage. So what did I do? I bought those same servers refurbished from Amazon for $1,000 each, so the same i3 servers that they actually use and still resell now. And I bought them for $1,000 each. So with Amazon, it would have been $11,000 a month just for the compute. For 3 years, that's almost $400,000. I spent $11,000 one time and it was done. So to put that into context, it was always more expensive to go to the cloud. But people didn't realize what they were doing on the cloud. Oh, just go there. It's going to save you money. So people went to the cloud indiscriminately, believed all the fluff, and didn't realize that the cloud was just somebody else's network in a data center. So now they're on the cloud and they're, wait, my virtual servers are costing me 8 times more than they did before. My storage performance is slower and it costs 4 times more than it did before. Wait, I'm not more secure. Of course they're not secure. It's just a virtual data center versus the physical one. But see, Leonard, the benefits of cloud computing are not cost or agility. They're the ability to add capacity on demand. They're the ability to have a lot of these APIs and libraries pre-made for you, so you can deploy things very quickly. So people went to the cloud for the wrong reasons. So what we're seeing in what I talked about 3 years ago, Leonard, and David Lithicum is talking about now and for the last year, is organizations are saying, the heck with this. We're not sticking the stuff that doesn't make sense on the cloud. We're bringing it back to the data center, which is a new opportunity for the cloud architect to design a private cloud for them. So we get paid to bring them there and we get paid to bring them back. You still need a cloud architect for a Nutanix cloud or an OpenStack cloud, which is pretty much the future, especially after VMware's licensing model change. So more opportunities for the cloud architect now to create the hybrid multi-cloud, which we told people they would be doing from scratch. If you go back and you look at our things 4 years ago, we talked about why nobody should ever use a single cloud and why the data center was always more secure and why it was faster, et cetera. So companies are doing what we said they were. So it's not doom and gloom at all. Now, here's where it gets interesting, Leonard. About 1.5 years ago, JP Morgan Chase read an article about how they saved $2.5 billion a year by not using the cloud. Big money, $2.5 billion a year. So in the last 2 years, it's been $5 billion, not wasting the money on the cloud, doing it themselves. But now, Leonard, all of a sudden, JP Morgan Chase is moving 60% of their workloads to the cloud. And why is that? Artificial intelligence. Because cloud architectures are AI architectures. And why, Leonard, is so much of this AI going to the cloud? Well, a couple things happen. One is the cloud providers bought up all the GPUs, the graphics processors that are going to be used to do the compute, which means it's near impossible for businesses to buy them. So they have no choice but to go to the cloud. The second thing is the cloud providers have been creating some of their own large language models and their own tooling, which means organizations may use the cloud. It may cost them more money, but they may be able to use pre-made things, which enables them to get up systems quicker to gain their competitive advantage. So Leonard, I see it all gone to the cloud, all the AI stuff. And then a couple of years from now, when the GPUs are fully available, a lot of that workload will go back to the private cloud, and then everybody's going to be doing great. But they need us to bring them in. They need us to bring them out. And the clouds aren't going anywhere. It's just how the clouds are used more frequently.
Yeah, so the whole idea about moving your workloads off premise and hosting it somewhere else is not necessarily a new or novel concept. That's how hosting websites generally work, right? You purchase a host, you upload your pages, and they actually take care of keeping your website up. But I like to use this type of analogy. I hope it paints a good picture. We have this idea in actual trading. It's called the correction. So what happens is, let's say you have the market, it keeps going up, up, up. Eventually it gets to a point where it almost seems like overnight, the market starts trending. That's also another word, trending the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. So in many eyes, they'll scale back. They look at the overall volume and demand in that particular commodity that they might be trading. And they're trying to figure out, is this just a counter trend within the overall larger trend? And if it is, that's a correction. Many times corrections happen because of profit taking at the top. Businesses are, what they're doing is they're simply scaling back the position that they initially had, but they're not completely removing themselves from that position. As a matter of fact, depending on the size that they have initially invested, they can actually have market move. They have moves that move the market. If you think financial institution banks, they can actually influence how the market moves up or down. So what they'll do is eventually they'll get the market to a point where they'll come back and buy new positions. And then the correction is done and it moves back up. So I liken that very much to the cloud. What happened initially, we had this hype train that just went up, 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 up. Now we got at the top. People figured out it wasn't all sunshines and rainbows that everybody thought. The actual benefits of the cloud were different than we were initially led on to believe. And guess what? Here is the correction. But that doesn't mean people are moving everything away from the cloud. What's really happened is that everybody had a learning experience. That's really what it comes down to. They learned what they can use the cloud for and how they're going to do it. Before they didn't. It's like that shiny red ball syndrome, right? We see something very similar with AI kind of going on right now. Everybody wants to be on the train because they have the fear of missing out. They need to do it because everybody else. They don't want to get into this situation where they didn't go for it and then get blamed for it that they didn't try to evolve the company or revolutionize, right? That's the term, revolutionize the company. But that's all it is right now. We're just simply in a correction. Now is though the time though to make sure that your fundamentals are right, get those architect skills up, learn about the data center, learn about virtualization. If you're then interested, there's going to be another peak eventually. It's going to surge back up. It might level out a little bit. You'll have like a sideways correction and then we'll continue up. The reason that is because people have found use for it. And that's why it's not going away. Just see it simply as a correction. When you're ready, and that's what we train people for, put in another position, buy again, and you'll see that it will be beneficial to you.
This is not investment advice, by the way. This is
I'm just using this analogy because people see it.
The same kind of thing goes up in a business cycle, up and down. But yeah, we're going to see lots of overinvestment in AI. And then they're going to come to architects to say, hey, wait a second. We got too tech heavy. Our engineers pushed us into something. Now we need someone that's business focused to help us craft a strategy to make this stuff work. So lots of opportunities for both. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, we have a ridiculous amount of smart people in the world. And I mean genuinely intelligent people that come up with different solutions. You can see it simply when you look at different protocols and how they're designed, how people put them together, the logic behind it. So, but even though we have all these incredibly smart individuals out there, they can't see or foresee everything, right? We knew that there was going to be a challenge with security once we started having these hybrid workloads between the premise and the data center. We knew that there was going to be issues. We already tried thinking, how can we resolve them? Well, guess what? Then we decided one cloud wasn't enough. We need redundancy. We also need scalability. And guess what? Another cloud might have been cheaper than the previous cloud we were at. So now we have multi-cloud environments. And then eventually we figured out this was all a bit too expensive for us anyway. Now we have hybrid multi-clouds. And some things for security purposes, you will move to the cloud anyway. But we learned lessons along the way. We learned ways to improve things. Sometimes things that we just simply could not foresee. And that's a cycle within anything from business to technology. Heck, it's a cycle in life. Sometimes we just have to go for it, see where all the pieces lie or fall, and then improve upon it.
Yep.
Great question. Love that one, Leonard. So from CloudStation, hi, Mike. How important is governance and compliance when it comes to cloud architecture projects? Does your training teach anything related to this?
CloudStation governance and compliance is absolutely very important to everything architecture. And of course, we teach a lot of it. You know, as architects, we're going to be working with the legal team, especially in highly regulated industries. And again, we don't touch technology as an architect. We're not engineers, but we interface with everyone. We will be working with the organization's governance, potentially the board of directors, as well as the C-suite. We may be working with the legal team. We're going to have to be creating governance structures, change management structures, and everything else for the organization. So CloudStation, very important topic, and accordingly, we spent a tremendous amount of time with it. Before we get to the next question, if you've got questions, please ask us so we can assist you either building your cloud architect career, solution architect career, AI architect career, network architect career, security architect career, or any of the other wonderful tech careers. We focus on architecture careers, but there's other ones that are there that are good as well.
Yep. But the important thing is don't be shy to ask your questions.
Yeah.
Feel free. Trust us, we're not shy to tell you if we don't know. But we'll try our best. Kevin, welcome, Kevin. Nice to see you be here. When attending conferences, how do I go about introducing myself? Or if asked, who do I work for? How do I come across cloud architect experts? So let's start off with the first one. How would you go about introducing yourself?
Okay, so I'm going to actually do it in the reverse.
Okay,
Kevin,
I'll go with that.
I know you. You are super smart. There is no way in the world that you're ever going to convince anyone that you're an expert. And here's the reason why. It takes at least 10,000 hours in the field of doing just one thing to be an expert. So at your age, you don't have the ability to be an expert in anything yet because you're very young. So let's talk about now how you show the people, the world, that you're actually great, which is what you can do. And let's talk about that. So, when you go to conferences, you can tell people that you're a solution architect with Go Cloud Careers, or an associate cloud architect. You can tell them what you do. If anybody asks, you design solutions to improve your client's business performance. You respond to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs. You create high security architectures. You create 99.999 ultra high availability and multi-cloud architectures. You design systems for enterprise-wide computing. These are architecture things that you can do. And if you actually have a real architecture discussion with someone, they'll know that you're good. So we can't go to expert unless you've got 10,000 hours, but we can get you to be seen as very good and very competent, which is the goal. And it becomes very simple when you talk to people, the kind of conversations that you're having. If someone's talking to you, if you're having an architecture discussion with someone and you're talking business process reengineering, and you're both having that conversation, they know you're an architect. If you're talking about writing Python code, they know you're not an architect. They know that you're an engineer. And being an engineer is fine if you want to be an engineer, but if you want to be an architect, you better show that you're an architect, not an engineer. So if you can have business level discussions with people and start talking about, what AI can do. Why do you think generative AI is overhyped, even though you think that generative AI is going to change the way we live, work, and play? Because it will. Where do you see the business opportunities to leverage AI to optimize performance? Are you showing that you're excited about this? I saw somebody that tried to say that. How did they tried to point it? So somebody went to one of the Amazon free artificial intelligence training, and they summarized it and they said the key goal is to develop a cloud-first strategy for artificial intelligence. No. That person took the training and got taught how not to show themselves as an architect. We're not trying to create a cloud-first strategy. We're trying to create a customer-first strategy to enhance our clients' business performance. So when you can show that you are a trusted advisor. Now, Kevin, you can also show depth. Everybody's all excited about zero trust. Zero trust isn't enough for security. Zero trust is I just don't trust everybody. Defense in depth has its real strengths too. What is it that defense in depth does that we need? What is it that zero trust does that we need? Why is it that defense in depth married to zero trust would provide our enterprise customers greater security than either approach alone? Again, you're showing yourself as an architect. So what are the common problems that organizations are facing right now in this high inflation environment with high interest rates? And how can you leverage that knowledge as an architect to design a technology strategy to help a client overcome those things? That's how you go out there. Telling them you're an associate cloud architect with Go Cloud Careers, that's the easy part. It really is. Really is. But you're trying to show yourself as a leader. You're trying to show yourself as competent. What separates a real architect from an engineer who's a wannabe architect is the focus on business versus the technology. I love engineers. We need engineers to build it. They're the most technical people on the team. They are great. But I don't have any space for an engineer and an architect. Then again, if I hired somebody to be an airplane pilot and they were trying to hand out drinks to the people in the back of the plane, I'd be pretty upset because I want them to stand in the cockpit. It's really the same thing. Show yourself as an architect by looking, walking, and talking like an architect. I see something in my yard and it's moving like this, and then it gets down and then its tail's moving. I'm pretty sure it's a cat that's going to try and attack something because I've seen it. And I don't even have to see the pointy little ears or the whiskers. I can pretty much just tell by the motion of the cat that it's a cat because I'm a cat person. I love cats, but that's neither. I love dogs. I love birds. I like anything with fur and feathers. But, kind of keep that in the back of your mind. That's how you do it, Kevin. You are very smart, Kevin. I know you. So go out there and develop your strength in one of these things and have conversations where you're an expert. That's how you show competency. That's how you show expertise, even if you can't be an expert without 10,000 hours. But that's how you do it. That's how you show your wisdom.
And Kevin, I'm going to take a little bit different approach here. Don't focus on trying to prove you're an expert.
No.
Expert can mean different things for different people. I give you my experience, and I'm not going to make the claim I'm an expert, but there have been plenty of occasions where I've interacted with customers, and my focus was to provide them the best service based on what I can do and what they need. And many times throughout the different conversations I've had with customers, I never threw around my CCIE, I never threw around my credentials. I was assigned, I had to tackle it. But many times through just being a human being to them, building a relationship, talking to them, and letting them know that we can get things done. People are going to build a silhouette of you and start filling it out. Things are going to get brighter and brighter and brighter. So just through your interaction with them, as Mike said, there's going to be a certain amount of speech involved, how you say things, how you deliver them, how you carry yourself. And then on top of that, as you provide them a clear picture of a solution or show them that you can get things done, they will make up if you are an expert to them or not.
Yes.
You don't have to tell them. It's like the same idea when you read on resume. I communicate great. I communicate great. Really? So I'm supposed to take it at face value because you keep telling me you do. Show me. Talk to me. Communicate with me, right? So that's that aspect. Let others say you're the expert. Don't tell them you are. Show them by how you carry yourself and how you act, like Mike brought out. Now, when it comes to introducing yourself, very simple. Be a human being and be curious. How difficult would you say it is? Let's say you go to a conference, you see somebody standing there. You're already at the conference anyway. That means you have something in common, right? That's why you're there. And you simply walk up to them with a smile and you say, "Hi, my name is Kevin. What brings you here?" Something as simple as that. Show interest.
Yeah.
Otherwise, "Hi, my name is Kevin. I work with X, Y, and Z. What brings you here? What have you thought? What has caught your eye?" Or just say, "What is your name?" Very simple. Just be a human being. Doesn't have to be super complicated. And if that other person has interest, most likely they'll love telling you why they're there. Maybe they found something. Just go with it. Keep the questions open-ended. Let them also ask you. Let them know why you're there. Something very simple, Kevin. Just be a human being. Show interest. Just like you would with a customer if you're trying to find a solution to their problems.
Yes. And, it's kind of like on an interview, don't tell me you've got good communication skills. The way you communicate is going to make it clear to me, just like Mark highlighted. So there's that. And that there's so much to be said for that. It's funny, yesterday I went to get a massage at the yoga studio. My friend Todd runs a yoga studio for 18 years, and he's also a massage therapist. So I scheduled my time massage for yesterday. And as I got to the location, there was a young woman, and she was approximately 30, and she was pointing to her lower back, and she was saying, "This is bothering me." And immediately said, "I think I have a herniated disc because it hurts here." And I said, "Well," I knew her name, and I said, "Well, is it going down your leg?" And she said, "No." I said, "Is it localized right here?" And she said, "Yeah." I'm like, "Okay, well, when you get into this yoga pose, does that cause you any pain here in your groin?" And she says, "Yeah." I said, "What's your mobility level? Can I check your internal?" I said, "Could you show me your internal rotation and external rotation?" And I saw it, and I said, "You most likely have a labral tear." And then she says to me, "Yeah, I know you're a yoga instructor, Mike, but did you practice medicine in your life? I'm like, well, as it turns out, the answer is yes. Like, she knew. I didn't have to tell her because I couldn't even, just the way I communicated demonstrated competency in physical medicine and rehab. I didn't tell her what I was. I was trying not to do anything. I was trying to help my friend Todd have a conversation on a medical basis just because I happened to be there. And that's the key to remember, is it becomes very clear if you're there. You speak to David Lithicum, you speak to me, you know we're an architect. I don't even need to tell you that I'm an architect. I probably would at some point because you'd ask, but the point is I might introduce myself as an enterprise architect or any kind of architect I felt like it, because I change hats all the time and architect business cards because I love all these architecture roles. But Kevin, you're really smart. Show people who you are. They're going to like you. Relax it down a little bit as your competency grows bigger and better. Be you.
100% agree. All right, question from, and I am sorry if I'm mispronouncing this, but I think it's Adeshile. Sorry if I mispronounce it, but the question is, I have over 5 years experience as a manual QA engineer. I want to transition to a solution architect. What are the steps I should be taking, and how long do you think it will take?
Great question. So first I want to offer you 2 things. One is I want you to join us on Thursday on the How to Become a Solution Architect, Cloud Architect webinar. And I also want you to download the free guide on how to become a cloud architect. And my team will pop that in the chat box for you. So I wanted to start off with that. The next thing to remember is you can be anything you want, and you can get there as quickly as you get the best training, and you can become competent on these skills. So the speed that you learn is going to have a big impact on it. First thing I'm going to tell you right now is engineering and architecture don't have a lot to do with each other. So effectively, even though it's going to look better on your resume and you're going to earn more, you're starting as if you're transitioning careers. And that's okay. Look, I went from internal medicine to architecture. You could sure go from engineering to architecture. It's no big deal. So what is it you have to learn? In the engineering world, you're focused on how to do something. A manual QA in networking you might create a script and use an IXIA to generate network traffic, for example. Someone might be trying to break stuff and find bugs. That's what QA people do. And that's a great skill. And guess what? That knowledge that you have right now, if you're an architect, will help you craft a strategy for future product testing and future service testing. So life is cumulative and you're going to take that with you. But what you have to understand is the architect is a business job, which means you're going to have to develop business acumen. You could be trained by us, and we include business acumen, or you could go get a master's in business administration for business acumen. Either way, you need to know business. And why is business so critical for the architect? We design systems to optimize business performance. So if you don't know business, you can be a great engineer, but you can't be an architect. Now, the next thing to remember is architecture roles. We don't touch the technology. There's no configuring in our world. There's no coding in our world. There's no testing in our world. We are system designers. So that means we're going to have to learn how to get the requirements from the customer and learn about the customer's vision. That's going to take an extremely good level of communication skills, executive communication skills, and traditional communication skills. We also, because we're going to be dealing with the C-suite and potentially the board, we have to develop something called CXO relevancy. It wasn't covered in my MBA. I took training for it after the fact. I provide that training in our Cloud Architect program because it's pretty hard to get hired without those skills. The next thing that I'm going to tell you right now that you need to learn is to sell. Because as an architect, you're going to be selling, either selling to the board, selling to the executive team, or more than likely, you're going to work at a cloud provider, or you're going to work at a Big Four consulting firm, and you have to sell the consulting engagement and the solutions. You're going to have to learn how to sell. Now, I can see where your name's from. Love it. I'll use an African proverb, which is my favorite in the entire world. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Guess what? Architecture is about leading teams. We will never design anything by ourselves. So you're going to have to develop the leadership skills to build, lead, and design a team. You will also be managing stakeholders, the various business units and departments, and all the various people in the organization that have the stake in the organization. And if you can't manage them, your architectures will fail because they won't get buy-in, they won't be implemented properly. And then after that, you're going to have to make sure you've got some good negotiation deals and good presentations because of your skills, because you're going to be presenting every day. You have to develop them. You can train them in our Cloud Architect Career Development Program. You can go to business school and get specialty training, but you're going to need it either way. Next, we get to the technical skills. Now, we have to understand that we don't touch anything. So any coding, configuring, implementation skills that you may have learned in a certification don't apply here. We have to get involved in how the system works. Here's the difference. I'm sure you use a computer every day. I'm 100% sure of it. But do you understand how the CPU in that computer works? Do you understand all those cores and how those cores communicate with other cores? Do you understand how information is fed into the level 1 cache, level 2 cache, level 3 cache? Do you understand how the DRAM in your system interacts with the CPU itself? Do you understand the number of PCI lanes on that CPU and how that would translate to how many, for example, GPUs you could use in a computer for a machine learning environment? Do you understand how those NVMe interfaces work and how they actually use for storage versus a SATA interface versus a SAS interface? So you're now going to have to take training in how systems work, which is the exact opposite of what's taught in a certification. So you're going to need training in that. And you're going to need training in the network and the data center because that is the cloud. So that means you will need to learn networking. No big deal. We teach it. We're experts at it around here. We love networking. But there are things like VLANs, VLAN tagging, VLAN trunking, spanning tree or rapid spanning tree, link aggregation groups, and your WAN technologies such as private lines, IPsec, VPN, software-defined networking SASE. None of this stuff is that complicated. We teach it every day. And then it's getting involved into the data center technologies, which is like servers and server virtualization, containers and container orchestration, storage area networks, load balancers, forward proxies, reverse proxies, the types of business applications you would use, whether they be CRM systems, ERP systems, those kinds of systems, unified communication systems. And then it's getting a good knowledge of security. What kind of IAM systems are out there? Not that that's security, that's IAM. How demilitarized zone design, next generation firewalls, IDS, IPS systems. How they work, not how to configure them. So this is a cake job compared to being an engineer. Engineers work hard. You know, we take clients to lunches, dinners, and drinks. It's the best job in the world. But you have to learn how to put them together and how to lead the team to design it. And then after it's designed, you got to go back to sell it to the customer. And then as soon as they say, Mike, I want this, typically speaking, you get a nice bonus or a commission, depending upon the organization you're at. You go off to the new client, and the engineers come in and build it. They're the super techies. So that's what you need to do. But please download that free book. Come to the Free Guide on Thursday. We'll tell you. And if you want, I'll even give you a mini interview on that and see if you're ready for the job now. Maybe you're properly prepared. And if you are, I'll tell you right now, go apply.
Now, Mike gave you a very, very verbose answer.
Yeah.
I mean, he gave you a lot more than pretty much anyone would give you on a free session. Let's just put it that way. But while what I'm about to say can apply to everybody here, I'm going to be specifically speaking out to you, Adeshila. Do what Mike says in regards to download the free guide. Number one, it's free, and it provides a great foundation that you can look forward to based on the information there. Then sign up for the webinar on Thursday. But I want you to do something specifically in preparation for that webinar. Because what I want to do is I want you not to just take what we say at face value. I want you to prove it to yourself. Come back on Thursday and then prove it to us. So do this. Number one, find out what is a solution architect or an enterprise architect, right? The important part is this architect piece. See what they do. What do people ask them to do? Find that out. Start writing down some common things you notice in regards to their skill sets, both what we call hard and soft skills, meaning technical and non-technical skills. Write them down. Next, what I want you to do is, and I want you to be transparent with yourself, start writing down the skill sets that are required of you as a quality assurance engineer. Write them down, both hard skill, meaning your technical skill, and your soft skills, your non-technical skills. And start checking what skills you can transfer. For example, as a quality assurance technician or assurance engineer, isn't it true that you spend quite a lot of time finding things on purpose that are wrong with the software, and then trying to figure out how do I communicate, how do I collaborate with different members of my team to explain to them what I found. That to me, and you might find yourself too when you do this actual analysis, this reverse engineering, that you might have a few more skills already at your disposal that can transfer you to an architect role. But do that, join us on Thursday, and then let me know, let Mike know, Alonso know, our team and Chris, what you found. And then let's build from there and see what other steps we can practically give you that you can build your career on top of. But give that a shot. I'm curious to see what you find out. And I also want you to be invested. Remember, it is your life, it is your futures, not ours. We're just here to give you the tools necessary to be able to succeed. But you need to do the work. So just remember that.
And if you want to get a list, here's what I would do. Stay away from job descriptions because they're cut and paste and they're meaningless. Find principal architects at AWS, Google, Cisco, IBM, and Microsoft. Look at what the principal architects are putting down on their LinkedIn profile for their jobs. Do not look at a job description because you're going to get cut and paste garbage, which is what we typically do. We just cut and paste stuff. And that way you'll actually see. And the reason I say principal architects is the following. They're the people that have made it. Because there's lots of people that try to be an engineer in their architecture role, and 5 years later, they're in the same role. And then here's what they put on their resume. Ex-AWS. Here's what ex-AWS means. They couldn't get promoted, so they left. We don't want that. You want to see the people that are the principal architects at Google or Microsoft or Amazon or Cisco and IBM, because they're the people that have made it. These are the people that skills were so good, they were doing the right things that they made it to the top, as opposed to people that were stagnant. So hope that answers your question. I'd love to see you on Thursday.
Look forward to it. Okay, next question, and welcome back, Mohammed. Always nice to see you join us. It says, any challenges for cloud networking with multi-cloud?
So, and actually it's a good time to remind everybody we've got a free AWS Advanced Networking Bootcamp next weekend. And tomorrow, Mark and I are going to do a BGP workshop, and we get all excited teaching tech. I'm an architect, so I don't get to get techie too often. I get to be very businessy very often. But when I get to talk about tech, it becomes fun for me. I just love tech. So I'll get to get a little geeky. So, Mohammed, it depends on who you ask. And what I mean by this is, if you ask an experienced network architect about multi-cloud networking, they're like, yeah, what's the challenge? It's the same silly business I've been dealing with for the last 30 years with multiple data centers. And they'll tell you the only challenge that you'll ever deal with is that the cloud providers have such limited networking capabilities that it makes us feel like we're going back to 1999. Now, if you ask someone that doesn't understand networking, Mohammed, oh, it's going to be complex. Now there's BGP and there's some route aggregation that you need to do, and you need to set up your WAN technology. So for Mark or I, multi-cloud networking is nothing. It's less complicated than a CCNA exam, which, Mark and I could do in a couple of days, with the thought, to prepare for it. But so now I don't think there's anything with multi-cloud networking. Now, I do think that there's some good solutions out there by providers like Aviatrix, who's got a very nice, simple overlay network they can do to take the complexity out of it. I don't think it's a lot of complexity, but I'm a networking guy. If I wasn't a networking guy, if I was a software developer, I'd think multi-cloud networking was scary. But then again, software developers don't know anything about networking, and network architects like me don't know anything about software development because they are completely different careers. So for me, I don't see anything here. A whole lot of nothing for me. A whole lot of stuff that I did in 1999, rearing its head all over again. How about you, Mark? You've set up these multi-cloud networks.
Yeah, so I'm going to go a little bit different route here for you, Mohammed, because what happens many times is when you become more experienced, more competent in a certain domain, you don't really see challenges anymore the same way. It almost seems like it becomes a task that you got to check off and you move on because you already become aware of them, right? They've already slapped you over the face once or twice. You don't even need to turn the cheek. They'll do it for you.
Yep.
But if you think about a challenge, I can give you a very simple challenge that any type of cloud deployment can have if we're taking out the additional tools that eventually were developed for it. And that is called application visibility. Yeah. That could be a challenge. How would I go about solving application visibility issues? Then what about the transit that transit network between my location and the actual cloud service provider. That's always been a challenge because we don't own it. So anything between that network, we don't see. We barely have visibility into where our trace route goes, right? And if we go, let's say, if you don't understand this, don't worry about it. I'm just going to say it. But what if you're going through an MPLS enabled network and they disable you being able to see that it's actually labeled switch? So it looks like a hop.
Yep.
But the next thing you find out, you actually went through 50 routers, 50 different hops, but you didn't know because you have no visibility. So from a networking perspective, the visibility into your workflows is a challenge. Always has been, always will be. Now, when you're thinking about actual data flows, we've actually done this many times during class where we've discussed the challenges as to when it comes moving away from a traditional or what we call a legacy type of WAN model design, because we saw the explosion of internet traffic, which also got exacerbated because of the move towards cloud dominant traffic, which means we haven't seen a lot of lateral traffic anymore, meaning between our actual locations, and maybe we backhaul traffic to a data center if we needed to apply some type of centralized policy control. But now we're having to go out into somebody else's data center. Well, I can think of numerous reasons why that might be a challenge, aside from just seeing my flows, how they work, applying policy. A big challenge is always security. How do I tag on security through all of that? So just a few things to mention. There's always going to be challenges. How you approach them, how you view them will vary a little bit. And these days, we do have some fantastic ways to mitigate or minimize some of these challenges. I can think of, for example, something like a software-defined networking. That helps a lot depending on how it is implemented and what the overall design scope of it. It can help with application visibility. Mike mentioned something like an Aviatrix platform. Cisco is bringing in the Hypershield platform, which provides us security at pretty much a kernel level. But what they all provide us is a form of visibility into our data flow, into our workflow. Aviatrix, for example, provides us a nice backbone. So we can start seeing things. It connects us to the different cloud providers' networks. Again, extending visibility, extending what we have control over. So we have fantastic tools available to us to minimize these type of challenges. But you're always going to find challenges, especially, and finally, and this is the culmination, this is the cherry on top of the cake, you're still working for a business.
Yep.
Business has requirements.
Yes.
Guess what? With requirements come challenges. And that's going to be across the board. They're going to challenge you in regards to how applications are actually developed, how security should be designed, implemented in layers, at what choke points, because you're going to be building failure domains. Am I going to be applying this type of security policies? Then you're going to start wondering, okay, well, I'm dealing with some super, super duper secret stuff. This is confidential stuff. It can't leak. How do I secure that? Especially if I'm using a multi-cloud environment. So just a few things to ponder. But like I said, depending on how far you're in your journey, some challenges are going to seem smaller than others. But what is it, the saying, Mike, that has said somebody else's problem almost seems smaller than your own?
Yes, exactly.
I hope that gives you a little bit of an idea, Mohammed, that there is definitely challenges. They can be overcome. And people in the industry, intelligent people, are always working hard to try to figure out how we can get better every single day. Love that question. Thank you for that one. All right, from Srinivas, and again, I apologize if I mispronounce your name, but it says, I am a cloud native architect. How to become a cloud and DevOps architect?
Okay, Srinivas, so there's no such thing as DevOps in cloud architecture. It's a completely different skill. So I'm going to ask you this. What do you mean by a cloud native architect? Because I don't really believe that's a common thing. And here's what I mean. A real architect never picks out the technology ahead of time. They look at the organization and they look for their business goals. They look for their business needs. They look at the vision of the business. From there, that architect is going to evaluate the organization's business processes, and then have to re-architect the organization's business processes to meet the vision of the future. That will then look at all their technology. Cloud, cloud native, data center, motorized ice machines. I mean, literally robotics, anything the organization has. And then they're going to figure out how that fits into the future. And then they're going to create statements of work. They're going to respond to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs. They're going to set up a governance structure. They're going to change the organizational change. They're going to develop a change management thing. So as soon as somebody tells me, I'm just cloud native, you're not doing architecture. What you're doing is engineering. And you're talking about having a bias for cloud native, which bias or any technology selection has no place in cloud architecture. So you're probably now coming at it from a big engineering perspective, especially because you put cloud and DevOps in the same sentence. So how do you do this? Well, first, you're going to have to get the business acumen you need to be an architect, not an engineer. Then you're going to have to be able to learn to communicate to the executive team, find out the executive team's needs, learn about business process reengineering, develop the business acumen to understand various business problems. And whether that be accounting, whether that be finance, whether that be how that industry operates in an industry. Let's say we've got a hospital, it's in the healthcare industry, right? But different hospitals have various levels of sophistication and specialties. What is it you can do with that organization, with their given strengths and weaknesses in place in the market to put them in a better position? Maybe that organization does an incredible number of radiology reads, for example. Maybe it's a magnet for radiology people. I don't know. And maybe they need more radiologists. And how can technology enable radiologists to read things? If it's a radiology thing, how could AI integrate into those pre-reads that we can get a confirmation between the AI and the physician? And does that physician now need to be in the same country? And if the physician doesn't need to be in that same country, now what do we need to do as architects to work with the legal team to potentially change the laws, which we also do as architects in order to make sure that the technology is going to be in compliance with laws. I've been an architect forever. I'm constantly working with lawyers. You'll work with lobbyists too. And all of this in order to finesse the laws into things to give your clients this competitive advantage. So I think what you need to do is come to the webinar on Thursday. We'll go over the actual architecture role. And that way you'll know. Because if you're mixing DevOps with cloud architect, you're thinking engineering. And DevOps is great for people that want to do DevOps engineering. It's great for them. But if we architects are focused on DevOps and we're not focused on optimizing business performance, we're hurting, not helping our clients. If the architect tries to touch the technology, they take their focus off the business, they hurt their clients. This is why 70% of all cloud architectures fail. Because you can only focus on one thing. So it's all important. Those engineers are equally as important as the architects, but they do different jobs. So we've got to get you good at your job, not somebody else's.
Yeah, and I hope I'm not misunderstanding you in regards to what it is that you're doing right now. But I think what you were alluding to, and if this is incorrect, let us know in the chat. But I think you're already dealing predominantly with the design, the implementation, and the operations of applications and systems in the cloud. Probably. So if that's a correct understanding of mine in regards to what you meant with cloud native architect, then it would almost seem like if you're trying to pivot towards DevOps, that you're actually doing a step backwards. Yes. That's kind of like what it sounds like to me. So because the experience that you would have garnered, and again, it depends on where you are, right? The size of the company is going to far exceed anything DevOps related because you're sitting above that type of role. So if that's really the case, then it's like what Mike said. I would predominantly focus on developing and expanding your architect skills in case you want to be able to move up horizontally or at least laterally if it comes to any type of other architect role. But I don't believe it. This is, again, personal opinion that DevOps would necessarily be a step forward for you.
No, it would not.
Okay. All right. From Purnell, I often hear that companies have had AI and machine learning capabilities being developed for years, especially the larger enterprises. So would traditional AI architects just easily fill that demand of generative AI architecture?
Well, Purnell, not exactly. And here's the reason not exactly. There haven't really been too many AI architects in the past. They took us cloud architects, they took us AI architects, and they're like, here, We need you guys to work on some AI systems. Now go hire some PhD people with PhDs in mathematics and let them code it for you. So realistically speaking, the AI that's been existing, these machine learning, they're typically data scientists with PhDs in calculus and statistics. It's not really architects. They're more engineering driven. And then they're being driven by, people like me when I worked on the first AI system in 2001, people like David, who realistically is an AI architect and a cloud architect. But a lot of the times it would just go to people like us that were generic and say, all right, we need it. Okay, we're now leaders, which means we're good architects. We'll go find a team of really smart people and we'll just put them together. But our focus was so many things other than just AI. And really what's changed is the speed of the compute. I mean, it's kind of funny. I bought an NVMe RAID array that I showed my wife the other day. It had 8 4-terabyte NVMe drives, and it sat on a card that was 10 inches long and about 1/4 of an inch thick. And this thing could do 26,000 megabit per second. I mean, this thing was really cool. It was exciting to play with. And when I took it out, I showed it to my wife and I said, remember when I worked at Knight Securities? And she says, yeah, because it was the largest market maker on the NASDAQ. I worked for them around 2000. They had 2 data centers in one building. And each data center was about 200 meters wide, 100 meters long, from floor to the ceiling stacked with servers. And I remember the chief information officer gave us all a presentation. He presented it to the CEO and he said, we have 24,000 servers over here. And in addition to 24,000 servers, we have 4 terabytes of data. And I showed my wife this card, which had 32 terabytes of data. And the card was this big, not the size of miles and miles of servers in square miles. So the point is, what's really changed is the compute, the speed, the performance, and that enables us to do everything. And because of that, all those speed and performance enhancements, now we need focused architects versus those of us that were like, yeah, this is a little side project we're doing on the side. So no, they can't fill those roles. Good question though, Pernell.
All right, let's go to the next question, Tara. Thank you for that, Pernell. It's from, I hope you don't mind, I'm just going to call you Tamu. I know how it feels considering my last name, so if you're paid. It says, hello, Mike. I'm kind of new to the solution architect space. Just took a few courses on Coursera, and this is my first time here. What will your advice be to me on how to get knowledge and bag a job?
Okay, so Horsfall. Let's say this. You've got to learn architecture. And the architects that I've trained now work at Apple and Amazon and Cisco and IBM and Google and Microsoft and Accenture, Deloitte, KPMG, Capgemini, Barclays Bank, JP Morgan, Chase Bank, CDW, you name it, they work everywhere. And what I've had to do is I've had to take people and I've had to teach them architecture. Many people came to us as nurses and doctors and they got great jobs, or teachers or other people. And many people came from us from engineering, and we took the engineering out of them. We spent a year with our engineers, and we taught them how to think like architects, act like architects, and not be engineers when we get there. And they typically get there in the same period of time. The courses you took on Coursera, they're not going to help you. I wish they would. If they did, I wouldn't have started this company 4 years ago. I started it because I had no choice. Those courses typically are the name of a service and how to configure something. And they're based on systems administration. Guess what? In our world, we don't do any of that. We don't touch the technology. We don't configure it. So I want you to join us on Thursday on the How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. I also want you to download the completely free guide. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to develop the right business skills and the right executive skills and the correct technical skills, which are design skills, not building skills, design skills. And design skills are more about how things work and how you put them together versus how to build them. So come to these free webinars and we'll give you the list of things, but you're going to have to focus on learning how to give an architecture level presentation, unless you've learned that from another career. You're going to have to focus from working with executives and communicating with executives. You're going to have to learn how to communicate to executives and the things they care about. The executives don't care about your tech. They care about the return on investment capital. They care about how it can optimize their business, how it's going to change their business processes, for example, how it can increase their revenue, how it can decrease their operating expenses, and you have to learn those skills. You'll be giving presentations each day, so you have to give presentations. You'll be leading and facilitating meetings, so you're going to have to develop these skills. And they're all trainable. You can learn them all. I promise you can. We teach them to people with no background and get them hired every day, so you can learn them. You'll have to learn how to respond to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs. You'll have to learn how to lead large teams. You'll have to learn how to manage stakeholders and manage vendors. And then you just have to learn those network and data center components and how to design them. 80% of this job has nothing to do with the tech. I'm not joking. It's facilitating meeting, it's giving presentations, and it's selling things. It's smoothing over ruffled feathers from somebody that offended someone for no reason. But you still need to know these network and data center design skills like servers and server virtualization, containers and container orchestration, storage area and networks, load balancers, forward and reverse proxies, security appliances like firewalls, next generation firewalls, IDS, IPS systems, VPN concentrators. Those are the kind of things. I'll cover that full list on Thursday, but I got to tell you, Horsfall, this is the best job in the world. I've had lots of jobs. I practiced internal medicine in my nurse practitioner days, been a firefighter, paramedic. I made the mistake of becoming a network engineer for about 6 months before I said, I don't ever want to do this again, and I want to be an architect. And I changed to the architect space, and it was the best job I ever got paid. People paid me to do something that was fun, that I loved. So join us on Thursday. We'll help you.
And I'll add this to it. Mike was very detailed in this, but I wanted to say this to you, Tamu, and to everybody here. You should be commended. Yep. You did one of the hardest things that anyone could actually do. And that is you took a first step.
Yes.
You won't believe how difficult it is for many people just to start. And here you are, Tamu. You already went out there, irregardless of what it is, right? We're just saying you took that step. You went out there. You tried to educate yourself. You found yourself here. We're happy to have you here. And join us on Thursdays. And the same thing applies to everybody else. Yeah. The fact that you're here taking this first step, believe it or not, that's the hardest thing. Everything else will come with time and effort, but it is achievable. A lot of these things, believe it or not, you can learn. They're not natural talents. No. You can learn them. And you should be commended for looking out there and trying to improve your lot in life, your family's lot in life. So I'm very happy, very proud of you, Tamu. And I hope we see you on Thursday.
Yeah, and I hope to see you on Thursday. And anybody can learn these. Mm-hmm. Anyone. What we did yesterday has no bearing on our future. What you ate for dinner yesterday doesn't have any bearing on what you eat today. You can go from healthcare to architecture just like I did. And you got to do what you love. And you're going to be great. And we want to help you get there.
Be curious and keep moving forward. So from Don, cloud engineering. He's a cloud engineer at a big consulting firm for the past 7 years and was exposed to all sorts of projects and roles that he's been part of. He's asking, how valuable am I to a product team in a company? What is the transition like?
Don Dole, you can be highly valuable to a product team. But what you're really saying to me is, I fixed the engines on an airplane and now I want to be a fighter pilot. You can be a great fighter pilot or any other airplane pilot if you get the right training. So what does product teams do? They determine how to build the product that the customer is willing to buy, how much they're willing to pay, and what features and functionalities are necessary there. Chances are there's very little of that in cloud engineering. So let's talk about the two options you have in product. One can benefit from your engineering, but if you take the option that benefits from your engineering, the pay will be about half, as if you take the job that has no benefit or no ties from your engineering. You can be the product architect. Now, all your time in engineering won't apply here. The product architect is the product designer. They determine the minimal viable product. They give presentations to the board of the internal company and the internal company's executive. They build business councils of customers that tell them what features and functionality they want on the product. They do roadshows with the product. And this is a very good, high-paying job. Now, for that, you'll have to learn about product. You'll have to learn about marketing. You'll have to learn about leadership. You'll have to learn how to facilitate meetings. You're going to have to learn how to communicate like an executive sell, kind of like we teach in our Cloud Architect program. And that is a great job that will pay you very well. Now, if you want to stay in the engineering world and benefit from your job, you can be what's called a technical marketing engineer. And these are basically engineers who become subject matter experts on the product. And when the product architect goes out there, which is the owner of the product, the leader, the executive, if you will, the engineer goes on there, and let's say Mark's with me and I'm the product architect and Mark's my engineer. And I say, Mark, and the customer says, tell me how this Ceph switching works. Someone like Mark can get down and dirty and talk about how Cisco Express Forwarding works on a Cisco switch. Where me as the architect, I'm going to stay the heck away from it. I'm going to hire the engineer. But again, Don Dole, the engineer, which if you leverage their experience, is going to typically get paid half of the product architect that designs it. So you've got a choice. Go learn the business acumen, go learn the leadership, go learn how to sell, go learn how to manage stakeholders, go learn how to manage vendors, and go in there and be an architect like the kind of people we train. Or focus on becoming the engineer. But again, no matter what you do, it's going to be different than the job you're doing. So what makes you valuable? For real, what makes people valuable? What gives people the highest salary? Well, business acumen is the first one. I like to use the salaries.com statistics that the average person with business acumen earns $558,000 a year. And why? Because in every job that I know that requires high business acumen, principal architect, senior director at any of these big companies, they get paid $500,000 a year or more. And it's in line with what we're seeing. The engineers are $100,000 to $150,000 job. So how do you become more valuable? Business acumen is the skill that pays you the most. Leadership skills will pay you, can add an extra $100,000 a year to your salary long term. Emotional intelligence, all in all, affects someone's average salary by $29.6 thousand per year. That's how you make yourself more valuable. You add a good attitude, and energy, enthusiasm, and passion for that job, you're worth more. You add being a good team player, you're worth more. So at the end of the day, when it comes down to it, what are you really trying to show you're valuable for? It's not what you think you're valuable for and the tech stuff that makes you feel valuable. It's what you can offer others that they feel valuable. That's the secret. I hope that made that clear, because I want the best for you, Don. Don't.
Yeah, and it's a little unfortunate because we view things that we have done because we're proud of them as being valuable, but the reality is not everybody shares the same sentiment. So the best thing is find out what do they need, and then get those skills. We always drive very much towards the soft skill side because that's the most transferable, and we've also seen that compared to a lot of the hands-on positions, that they also give you the highest return on your investment back in time and resources that you've spent, and also give you the pretty much the highest potential of growth, if you think about it, because you can pivot in all types of different roles. So I would find out what it is that they need, what that transfer of skills is, and what might work in your favor. I've seen this happen a few times, not all the time, but somebody like Mike and myself, we can greatly appreciate that when we do speak to engineers. And because we're at the heart, we are these type of engineers that have just propelled ourselves forward in being able to design, present, and sell these solutions, is that we understand what it took for you to get that type of skill set. We appreciate that. We understand the battle that it took, right? For example, we always use the example of CCIEs. We were in the trenches together. We went to war together. We know what it is like. Exactly. So we know that also with fellow engineers, what it took, the hard work. And we definitely love working with engineers. We want to help them be able to expand their skill set and be able to move in positions like that. But you're definitely going to have to find out what it is that you want to move into it and what they require of you. And then see already what you have, transfer it, and gain the new skills. I prefer to stick to the soft skills because, especially in the beginning, if you're lacking them more, they're harder to get and be able to develop properly compared to technical skills. Next question from Amit. What should be my first step if I want to switch from infrastructure to the security side? I have 10 years of experience in IT management infrastructure.
That's a great question. You have to learn security. And, you know, I'm an infrastructure person at heart. And at one point I had to work in security. So what did I do? I learned security. The first thing that I did is I started asking the security architects things. and I started inquiring that I knew. I did what I call my favorite Intro to Security certification, which is the CISSP. That gave me a good foundation of things to actually learn. It was still intro level to CISSP. And then what I did is everything in that CISSP, which is like a 1,500-page book, I then dove deep and learned about 10 times each topic they had in the CISSP. And then I started to know what I was doing. And then what I would do is I would create security architectures and I'd run them past various security architects. Yeah, Mike, I like this. I don't like this. Okay, why don't you like this? What you would do. And I'd start talking to security architects across my organization, which was Cisco, which was pretty helpful because I had lots of security architects. But I also had friends that I knew that were security architects and I would work with them. And I also took a tremendous amount of security training. The good news is if you've got an infrastructure side and that infrastructure is networking, chances are you've got a good understanding of IDS, IPS systems, VPN concentrators, protocol analyzers, access lists, micro segmentation, some identity and access management. So you probably got a good of an understanding of the framework there anyway. And then it's really about figuring out what kind of security career you want. And what I mean by that, is we've got 3 kinds of security careers. We've got the architect who designs it, and this person needs to understand how the systems work and have all those business executive skills that we're talking about. You've got the engineer that builds it, and to them, it's less about how the systems work and how do I implement that Palo Alto firewall or how do I implement this DLP system. They're the hands-on builders. But we also have the ethical hackers, which are people that are paid to bring in, to break into the systems and find the vulnerabilities, etc. So you have to figure that out. Which of these do I want to be first? Because each of those is going to have a different skill. And then after you pick the career, then it's about getting the training in the right one you want. I recommend architecture because it's the highest paying, and it's the only job of the bunch that can't be replaced by AI because of all the people, the executive, and the communications with others. So I love architecture, but it really doesn't matter. You got to pick something you like, pick something you're going to be passionate about, and then go learn, and then go get whatever skills are. We architects, it's easy. We don't touch anything. We don't have to learn to build anything. We don't have to take any vendor certification on how to learn how to use a Cisco firewall. We need to know how that firewall works. We need to know how to design our demilitarized zone. We need to know what the security policy needs to look like. How do we communicate that security policy? How do we quantify the assets that we're protecting? How do we quantify the risk that an organization takes? See the difference in it? That's an architecture thing. We're the engineers. How do I configure this firewall? How do I configure this encryption? So we've got to figure that. If you want to let me know which of these roles you actually prefer, I can give you some more specific guidance, but we have to start with knowing the role you want first.
Yep. And if you got time, Amit, join us on Thursdays.
Yeah.
We'll be on Zoom. The nice thing about Zoom is you can come off mute, you can explain it. It's a lot easier to have a dialogue than that and just type it up. And sometimes things can be a little bit misunderstood in the chat. So if you have the time and you can make it, we'll love to see you there on Thursday.
And we can assess your skills too.
Yep.
Be more prescriptive.
Yep. All right. And so I believe this is going to be somewhat of a two-parter. Mike from, I believe it's pronounced Alshon, if I'm Alshon. Okay. Can you tell me some steps to know about my level in DevOps or Solution Cloud Architect? The reason is I may have stumbled in 2 job interviews due to feeling flustered, which has hindered my ability to articulate responses to numerous questions or recall important names and details.
Yeah, so the question, and which was it, so the first thing we have to figure out is which job, because you said solution architect or DevOps. I'm going to tell you right now, that's going to crush you. And here's the reason why. You've got 2 careers that have absolutely nothing with each other. It's kind of like you're trying to be a physician and an attorney. And that means, each one of these things people spend 7-8 years in school for. But if you're going to try to put them together, you will never be successful. So first we have to pick cloud or DevOps. And then we have to break it down into engineering versus architecture. Because I guarantee you, I can give you 50% of the architects I know, they wouldn't know how to do anything a cloud engineer does. And I can guarantee you that 90% of the cloud engineers that are out there have no idea how to do architecture. And my architects will have no idea how to do DevOps. So we have to figure that out. So once we know that, we'll be in a better place. I can tell you right now, and then I'll give you some guidance. If all you've done is something like the AWS Solutions Architect Professional, and the Azure Solutions Architect Expert and the Google Professional Cloud Architect. Like if that's all you've done, you're not going to be successful in any interview. They are all cloud administration, super junior level, name of a service. How do I configure that? So we have to get there. How do you know about your steps? How do you know where you're at? Let's say it was a cloud architect thing. I might ask you how an organization's weighted average cost of capital would affect their ability to use a private cloud like Nutanix or a public cloud. I might ask you things like, because I'm not going to ask you silly, stump the chump questions like, what is the IOPS and an AWS IO2 device? That's going to waste your time. It's not an architect thing. I don't care. You can Google that. But I might ask you, you've got an organization that has ultra high performance disk needs, and especially low latency. You need at least 3 million IOPS to make it work. What are your architectural options? Because that way you're going to have to think far beyond the services that are offered, and you're going to have to think about solutioning, either in RAID or maybe using something from NetApp, which could go to FSx for Lustre and make it look like block storage. There's other alternatives. I'm just giving you examples. I might ask you why a classic Bastion host is very risky for systems management when compared to a private line secured by IPsec. And I might want to see how you can answer it. I might want to ask you, what risks do you have by using an AWS service like DynamoDB or Amazon Aurora? What does that inject into your architecture that will cause simplicity, and where will it cause complexity? I might do something like that and ask you these questions. I might ask you, how would you design your demilitarized zone for a mission-critical web application? See, these are architecture things. And if you can answer these things easily, you should have no problem going on an interview. Like nothing. But if these aren't open and obvious to you, then you're going to need to be trained. And that's my experience. So one of the things I can tell you, Carr, is that before I started this company, I interviewed 1,000 AWS certified individuals. Most of them had more than one certification. A significant percentage passed the Certified Solutions Architect Professional. And I asked them things related to architecture, and I couldn't find one that even knew. Quite honestly, out of that list of 1,000 people, 990 plus couldn't even define what is cloud computing. Now, they knew the marketing names and they knew the configuration. So a couple of things. What you need to do first is figure out which career you want. Then you need to focus on the skills for that career. Then you will develop confidence. Imposter syndrome is basically your body telling you you're nervous because you know you don't know. And imposter syndrome goes away when you narrow it down and you're focused. Then once you figure the career, what you need to do is you got to focus on the top 80% of the skills. The most critical stuff, and all that other nice to have fluff, don't waste your time on it because it's going to be hard enough to learn the right skills. Then you're going to have to learn it and learn how to communicate it to others. We hiring managers are going to ask you questions, but we managers are further away from the tech, so we know less. So you're going to have to make it clear to us in minimal words before we tune out that we're interested. So I would do that. I also recommend getting some interview training. Every person that we train in our Cloud Architect program has interview training in it. They have resume training. Some other things that I would tell you is on your resume, don't have anything that you don't know well. What's the first thing I do when I interview someone? I look at the questions on their resume. And what do most resumes look like to me? They look like someone decided to cut and paste the wish list of a job description, which had 50 different careers. And when we read these resumes, we're going to look for words that don't look right. We're going to look things that feel out of place, and we're going to ask you on that question. And if we ask you a question that you don't know, and you bluff along the way, or you feel squishy in your answer because you gave us too many words but didn't give us any actual content, then we're going to drill in, and see if you can survive. And that's typically where it goes bad. So the key is, if you know what you know, answer them. If you know what you don't know, don't bluff to us, because I'm going to tell you, almost every interview dies that I've interviewed 6,000 people. 5,950 people lied to me. They either lied to me with what was on the resume, which as far as I was concerned was false advertising, or I asked them a question and they babbled about things that you just made up, assuming I'm an idiot and I didn't know. But I wasn't going to ask a question about things that I didn't know. So if you don't know something, just say, sorry, I've not had the opportunity to learn that technology yet, but I'm highly energetic, I'm highly enthusiastic, and I love technology. I know what I know and I know what I don't know, and I can find the answers to things quickly. If you want to check my competency, let's talk about my 1, 2, and 3 best things. Control the interview, guide the interview. But I kind of hope this sort of makes sense to you. Join us on the Thursday webinar. I'll give you a mini interview if you want. We'll give you a list of the things, and then we can actually help you figure out which career you want. And I know we're finishing up for today, but we'll be back in other days too. Ask us. Tell us, I want to do this job, and then we can get very granular. But right now, you're mixing cloud, a cloud architect or solution architect and DevOps, and they couldn't be further from separated from each other. And want to be really understanding exactly what you want to do. We'll get you there. We'll help you get there.
Yeah. So I'm before we wrap up, I'm looking at your follow-up here where you say, I may have stumbled into interviews due to feeling flustered. I don't know why you felt flustered, right? So the fact that you recognize that you were feeling flustered is good. What I would try to do is I would try to drill out what it is that caused you feeling that way. Because you could feel flustered simply because you didn't get a good night's sleep. Yeah. You could feel flustered because you had stress driving to the job interview. You could have felt flustered simply because a pretty girl walked by. You didn't expect it. Something as simple as that. What about if they ask you a question that was so out of the purview of what you expected to show up that it kind of threw you off your game? So I would definitely start off from that perspective, because the other one that you mentioned, what level are you at? We'll have to figure out what level, what are we comparing you to? And that is usually done better if we have an ability to speak to you, something like on a Zoom session like that we do on the Thursdays webinar. But when it comes to this particular thing, when you're feeling flustered, find out the root reason why you were, and then see if that's something that you can eliminate. Assuming it was not a problem just in itself with the question you were asked, but it maybe was something external that caused you to feel that way. If it was in regards to because you didn't know the answer, then you already know what you need to do.
Yes.
You need to know and learn it, know the answer, practice. We always say this very much, especially when it comes to any form of communication. Practice your delivery. There's no shame in doing so. We've all done it some which way or another, sometimes with audience, sometimes without audience, but we need to practice it. So keep that in mind. That's just my 2 cents on this. Thank you for your question again.
Okay, Tyrone, apparently we've got a couple more questions, so let's bring them in. Tyrone said that was the last. I thought that. So, everything Mark said there, but I'll also say this, in our Cloud Architect Career Development Program, we actually have training on how to be calm and how to, for example, control your emotions. We use certain breathing techniques out of India. They're called pranayama. We use some tactical breathing, which is used by the Navy SEAL community and the special operations community. I brought in some cognitive behavior therapy, which is widely used by Olympic athletes as well as the medical community. And if you can control your thoughts and if you can control your emotions, you'll be able to better control the interview when you're there. So I wanted to add on that. Tyrone, is there anything left on LinkedIn or YouTube for us? If so, great. If not, we will end here. So let me tell you about some free stuff. Join us on Thursday on the How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job webinar. It's a great time. We'll be able to talk to you. We'll be able to have a full conversation, assess your goals, and assess where you're at, and truly tell you the role of the architect, how to get hired when you're brand new, how to bypass those HR auto rejections, and we'll get you to your goals. I'm going to tell you that tomorrow, Mark and I get to be geeky a little bit. I'm an executive architect. I don't get to get geeky a lot. I mostly go to facilitate meetings and leading people, speaking to the press and other architecture type duties. And tomorrow, Mark and I are going to get geeky on BGP. We're going to go over PBGP. We're going to go to the protocol. We're going to do some traffic engineering. And to make it extra fun, Mark's going to get hands-on with some Cisco routers, show you some things on the routing table, and when we prepend ASs, or whether we change the weight or local preference of the med, you can see I'm getting excited because I love tech. Mark's going to demo it to you. So
and maybe, depending on your guys' interaction and question, I may do what Mike kind of threw out there in limbo and says, I wonder if we can maybe do a debug and just see if we can catch the BGP speakers exchanging and going through the finite state machine, for example, the active, the idle, to connect. Maybe we'll do that. If you want to find out, be sure to be there. That's my not so hidden kind of tease for tomorrow.
Yeah. So as you can tell, Mark and I are excited anytime we get geeky. We're both CCIEs, albeit a long period of time. My number is 7417, and his is like 65,000. And it took Cisco like 30 years to certify 30,000 or 60,000 people or so, because it's such a miserably tough exam, which is why we love it so much. So there's that. And while we're at it, I've got 3 CCIEs and a CCNP that on the weekend, next weekend, going over an AWS Advanced Networking Bootcamp. It's all free. We're going to get geeky. We'll talk about it. We'll even have some lab demos for you engineers that are out there, and it'll be fun. And we'll take care of it. So register completely free. So look forward to seeing so many of you on Thursday. Look forward to seeing so many of you at the BGP webinar tomorrow. Look forward to seeing you in other webinars in the AWS Advanced Networking. Have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great